survival skills and wilderness skills, and I've taught for about 20 years. I teach things like shelters and knives and tracking, traps, stuff like that, medicinal plants, edible plants, navigation. And today I'm teaching fire, obviously, and I know you guys did a little bit of fire safety and some other fire stuff already, so I'm going to hopefully show you guys some new stuff. There's we only have about 50 minutes, so I'm going to run through as much as I can the time we have, and then if everything goes well, then we'll have a little bit of time at the end for you guys to try some survival fire tools, and they're quite a bit harder than the tools than what you guys were trying to make fire with earlier today. So it's good kind of starter to do the cotton balls with the Vaseline and the matches, and then this will be much more challenging, so it'll be cool. For those of you guys who like challenges, it'll be fun. Before that, I'm going to show you two different kinds of fire. So I'm going to call one of them survival fire, and the other one is called Stone Age fire. So survival fire is what you guys are mostly used to or familiar with from camping. It's the same kind of stuff they use for camping. So a lot of times people use the word survival kind of all over the place. You kind of get really dramatic, like, you know, but most of you guys are never going to be in a survival situation where you need fire to save your life. Some of you might, but most of us don't. Most people don't end up in current ages, we don't end up in those situations. But that doesn't mean that it's not still useful. So being able to start a fire to save your life is also useful in a situation where being able to start a fire where it's like really bad weather and you're either going to have like the worst camping trip of your life and be cold and miserable for the next night, or you're going to actually have a decent night and enjoy yourself. That's the same skill that you use. So survival is sort of this dramatic big word, but really it's just like, are you someone who can make things happen when a fire needs to be made? Or are you a person who has to wait on someone else or wait on other people or hope and knock on wood that someone else will take care of it for you? So if you want to be that kind of person that can solve problems and make things work well, whether it's for your family or as you get older, if you have your own families, you go camping, you're outside, or if you get in a situation where you do get lost, and it is sort of a survival situation, and you want to like have a decent shot at making it through, then these are some of the tools that you could use. So survival fire stuff is usually matches and lighters and strikers. I'm going to show you those things today, mostly the strikers. Stone Age fire is what people have used pretty much all of human history. That's what fire has been. So you guys have, I'm sure that almost none of you or none of you have ever experienced Stone Age fire. It's not part of your lives. It never will be, most likely. But it was part of human lives for the species that we are. We've been around for, depending on who you ask, like 200, 250,000 years. So, and people have been using Stone Age fire of some sort for 245,000, 249,000. So the way we use fire now with matches and lighters, that's only about 100 years old, 150 years old. For all your family, from like going back tens and hundreds of thousands of years, like your family members, the way they lived life was using Stone Age fire, and I'm going to show you some of those techniques. And the reason I'm going to show you that is, you know, you're in outdoor school, you know, Stone Age kids didn't go to outdoor school, right? That would be kind of silly, right? It'd be ridiculous. So I would assert the reason that you're in outdoor school is because you guys, my generation's a little bit the same way. You guys are even more so the most at risk for having zero connection to the natural world, right? Like, it's not your fault. Your ancestors were born into the outdoors and they depended on the outdoors, and so they learned about it and they were really connected to the natural world. They were connected to fire, they were connected to the animals, the trees, the plants, all that stuff. You guys don't need any of that. You can go through your whole life without ever seeing a fire and you'd be fine. That's never happened before in human history until about 150 years ago. Fire was necessary for people to live their lives. So you guys, unless you like make an effort to get outside and learn things, you just won't have that connection. And it's not good or bad, it's just if you want to have that connection, and be connected to the natural world as a human being, you're going to have to chase it in a way that your ancestors didn't have to. So that's why I'm going to show you this today, just to kind of give you a sense of like, what did your great grandparents do? How did they live? And what was it like for them? All right. So I think it's really cool, and hopefully you guys will too. And you'll see something new or get curious about something. So the first Stone Age tool that I'm going to show you guys is this. It's called a fire extender. So Stone Age people were just like us in that they wanted to take shortcuts as much as they could, right? So if you have the choice between like using a rotary phone or a dial phone at home or getting a smartphone, pretty much everyone gets a smartphone because they're the easiest things to use and the most convenient. If you're going to like go to Portland and you could walk or drive a car, you're going to drive a car, right? Stone Age people were no different. They wanted to take shortcuts whenever they could. And so let's say for a Stone Age person, they're hunter-gatherers. And what that means, they hunt and gather for their food. They live outside. They travel most days or most weeks. So they set up camp. They do some hunting. They do some gathering from whatever's in season. And then once they've hunted out the area or they've gathered what they can, they move to another area. And when they're doing that, let's say they're like, okay, we're going to get to buffalo today. We're not sure we're going to get one, but we sure do hope so. We're going to have to walk really far to get it, to find it. And then when we get it, it might be late, it might be cold, we might be really tired. We're going to have to cut it up and cook it. And I'd rather not have to, like, on top of all that, get a fire going from just sticks in the rain. So what they knew to do is different materials that they could just carry fire on. So this is a cattail, and cattail will smolder like this for hours. So I could get this cattail and then get another larger one, like this one, and then I could carry that. This one would last for 5 hours probably. And I could wrap it in some green leaves, put it in my backpack, and start hunting for buffalo. And then once we got to the buffalo, I'd have something I could get a fire going with. I don't have to rub sticks together and do all sorts of crazy stuff. All right, so this is a tool that almost all of your ancestors would have been familiar with from like age 1 on, and they would have used it on a daily basis. All right, so that's the first thing. And I'm going to let you guys, pass around so you guys see what this is. You don't have to hold on to it if you don't want to, but just pass that around. Then once you're done passing it around, then hand it back to me because I'm going to use it for something. So when we have fire, I'm going to talk a little bit about fire science. When we have fire, there's 3 components of fire. So there's smoke, there's coal. Try and pay attention over here. You guys will all get a chance to handle that. There's smoke, there's coals, and there's ashes. What do you guys think smoke is made up of? We don't really think about that. Does anyone have any guesses what smoke is made up of? Yeah. It's not air, but it is a gas. So air is a gas, but it is a gas. It's not oxygen. We can see smoke, right? So air is invisible, oxygen is invisible. So what's smoke? Because we can see it.
When you say it's the burning ashes?
It's not. So ashes are separate. It's not ashes. Yeah.
It's evaporating water.
Great. So half the smoke, you got a half right. That's great. So there's water in trees and plants, and when we burn them, that water starts to boil and steam. And so some of the smoke is steam. And if you stand in front of a big fire that's smoky, you might notice that it's a little bit moist if you do that for long enough. But water vapor doesn't make us choke, right? We can go in a sauna and there's steam and we don't choke. So there's some part of smoke that we can't breathe that makes us choke. What do you guys think that's made up of? Yeah.
Is it carbon dioxide?
It's not carbon dioxide. Yeah.
The pieces of what you're burning?
It is. So the piece of what, so to be more specific, trees have wood in them, they have water in them, they have some other stuff in them, they have sap in them. And they have other kinds of like organic materials that are nutrients that travel up and down the tree to feed itself from the roots to the leaves. And that sap is a hydrocarbon and it's flammable. And when you heat it up, it goes from kind of being a resin and a gelish kind of stuff to becoming a vapor. And when it becomes a vapor, it rises up out of the smoke in the heat. It rises up as smoke in the heat. All right, and that smoke is the colored smoke that we cough on. If you make that smoke hot enough, instead of being smoke, it'll actually catch fire because it's flammable. And that's what flames are. When you see flames in a fire, they're not wood burning. Wood doesn't give off flames. It's the hydrocarbons that are in the plants that are giving off the flames. All right, so what do you guys think the coals are? Yeah. That's what the ashes are. The ashes are what's left that can't be burned. But what's the coals? Where are the coals coming from? Any guesses? Anyone want to? Yeah. Yeah. So like I said, like in a tree, you've got wood, you've got the sap and the resin, you've got water, you've got the stuff that doesn't get burned, and you've got wood. Most of the tree is wood. So when you burn it, just like a barbecue, you've got all this pure carbon wood that'll burn as embers, but it doesn't really give off flame. The flames are from the hydrocarbons that are in the tree. So when you see like briquettes or hot red coals, that's the wood. That's just the carbon wood. And then the ashes, does anyone want to take a guess at what the ashes are? What's the stuff that can't be burned, that's left over? If we burned you today, if you died and you got put in an incinerator and cremated, the ashes that were left of you would be exactly the same material, no difference from the ashes that come out of a tree being burned. So what do you guys think they're made out of?
Wood.
Any guesses? They're not wood. The wood eventually burns away and goes away. Yeah. It's not water. They're not flammable. It's not carbon. That's the coals. So the stuff that's left over, is minerals. So like potassium, calcium, sodium, those things that you need. All living things need minerals to kind of for their biology to work, including us. So the next thing I'm going to show you guys is about the fire triangle. I know you guys talked about the fire triangle at the last session, so I'm going to do a little bit of testing on you guys to see how much you learned. If I took a match, so thinking about the fire triangle, if I took a match and I put it to this, would this catch on fire?
No.
No. If I took so thinking again about, what is the fire triangle? Someone remind me. Does anyone remember?
Like
The three things you need for fire?
Oh wait.
Yeah.
oxygen, heat, and
Fuel.
fuel.
Yeah, great. So thinking about that, so there's a triangle, oxygen, heat, and fuel. You need all three of those things to be present for fire to happen. Fire is a chemical reaction. You guys haven't taken chemistry, but you all know what chemistry means. You know what chemical reaction means. So fire is actually a chemical reaction, and all three of those things have to be present at the same time in the same place for fire to happen. So if I take a match and I try and light this, it's not going to catch on fire, right? So I've got heat in my match, I've got fuel right here, and I've got oxygen in the air. If I take a flamethrower and I hit this, is it going to catch on fire?
No.
Probably will catch on fire. I'm going to say that it probably will. So what's happened in our fire triangle is that it's still the same amount of fuel, but the same amount of oxygen, but now I've taken the heat part of my triangle and I've blown that up. It went from like being a match like this, now I've taken that point on the triangle and I've made it this big. So that's the way when you're learning how to manage fire and make fire, knowing how to take advantage of the parts of the triangle that you can make a difference in, is going to be the way that you're going to be able to solve problems where you can't get a fire going. So is this a place where I can easily add more oxygen, or is this a place where I can't really do anything with the oxygen, but I could definitely increase the amount of heat real easily? So that's how you think about, when you're trying to solve problems with survival fire. So I'm going to show you kind of a little party trick that's really useful for in a survival fire situation. things are not going well, like someone maybe forgot the axe and the hatchet, you're going to go on a camping trip and you were going to have a really good time, but you kind of got there late, and then you're kind of mad because the person got there late and took the wrong directions, and then you get there late and you're like, okay, well, let's at least get a fire going, and then that same person, apparently like forgot the hatchet and the axe. You have all this good wood that you can burn, but like, nothing to burn it with. You're not going to be able to, you can't chop it down. So, all you have is a knife. So with this knife, I can't use this as a hatchet. I can't really be doing that. It's not going to work. I mean, I could start like carving on it, right? But that's not going to get, it's going to be a bunch of shavings that are just going to burn really fast. It's not going to give me a campfire that's going to last very long. So this is called batoning. This is a way that you can use a knife to process wood into smaller pieces the same way you could with a hatchet. So I'm trying not to, why would I not want to hit it all the way through? Yeah. This is harder than steel, so I'm going to ruin my knife if I go all the way through. So I'm just going to try it all. Alright, so now I've got this, right? So now I've got something that's going to be like, okay, that's a little bit better starter material. You guys can see how, if I keep on doing that, I'm going to end up with pieces like this size, right? You guys can all see that? I'm not going to do that because we don't have time. If I take, I said before, if I take a match, this isn't going to light, but if I take a match, same piece of fuel, and is that going to light with a match?
Yeah.
Okay, so explain to me, why would that, given the fire triangle, why would that light? Yeah.
Because it's a lot smaller and it's
Yeah, that's one of the reasons. It's smaller, so it doesn't need as much heat to get it ignited. What's the other reason? Yeah. You were.
Still has oxygen.
It's mixed better with oxygen. So when I burn this, the only place that fire can happen as a chemical reaction is the surface, right? I can't get fire to start in the middle. Why can't I get fire to start in the middle? Anyone think about why won't fire go in the middle?
because it's enclosed on its side, so then oxygen can't get to the side.
Right. So fire can only happen here where it meets oxygen, here, here, and here on these four sides. All right. So now that's where it can happen. Now if I take this and baton this again, let's say I baton this again. So I've got four sides at which fire can happen. And I take my piece. So I've got my four sides, that's where it can meet oxygen. Now all of a sudden, once I start making it smaller, I've got two more places where it can meet oxygen and more fire can happen. If I keep on breaking this down into smaller pieces, I've got all these places where oxygen can combine with the wood and make a chemical reaction we call fire. Now, to make the point of that, if I have like a 100, let's take a 1,000 gallon tub of gasoline. The top of the tub is like this big, right? And I throw a match in that, what's going to happen? Yeah, so it won't actually. It probably won't even go. It probably won't even catch fire. So you've got the gasoline. You've got a match. The match is this much heat. Very little bit of heat, not much. The gasoline can absorb some heat before it goes out, catches on fire. Because if it's like 100 degrees out or 110 degrees out, like gasoline doesn't just catch on fire, right? So it can absorb some heat before it catches on fire. If you have a little match and you throw it in there, it might probably just absorb that heat before it catches on fire. Now, if the match lays on top of that gasoline just the right way for a little bit of time and gets the heat going in the right spot for a little bit, you might get a flame started. but there's only one place that the flame can go. It's only where the gasoline, the top of the barrel, meets oxygen. Can I get a fire started in the bottom of the barrel?
No.
No, because there's no oxygen there. So I can have 1,000,000 gallons of gasoline in that barrel. And the only place where the fire can happen is where there's oxygen meeting the gasoline. Now, if I take the gasoline and I put it through a fuel nozzle and I spray it out into the world, and then I light it with a match, then what will happen?
Boom.
What? Yeah, then it will explode, right? So then I'll get a massive explosion. So I want you guys to think about like this here. This is like your bucket of gasoline, and this is like your spray nozzle on the spray, all right? So when you break things down like this, you create more places for the oxygen and the fuel to interact in a fire reaction. All right, so now I'm gonna show you guys how to do a campfire. And I'm gonna use the Stone Age tool to get it started. So what I've got here is I took some time to like prep some materials. So I've got a bunch of shavings, and what I've done is I've pinned them through with a lever or a stick. So I kind of pin cushioned that. So I've got these nice small shavings. They're kind of like my spray. And then I've got this handle. And what the handle does is now I can kind of move this around. If I need to get a match underneath there, I don't have to kind of like fiddle with it like this with both hands, kind of like messing with it. I can kind of pretty easily maneuver this and make my stuff portable. So that's one thing, it's kind of just a trick. And then I've prepped some other materials. So I've got some kindling that I've made. And the way I'm going to put this on top is I'm going to kind of pin cushion this here. And the reason for that, the reason I do this, there's lots of ways to do a survival fire or a camping fire. The reason why I would suggest like pin cushioning this, if you can, is because if I just lay this on here, it can these things can fall off. Especially if I'm like in a hurry and I'm anxious or I'm angry or I'm cold, then I might not be super careful and I might be like, shivering and then keep on dropping stuff and then it just falls off. So kind of like taking the time to pin cushion this in here, make sure that all your next stage stuff is going to stay where you want it to be so that the fire is actually going to work. So take a little bit of time to really set yourself up for success, and don't be a spaz and just start like throwing stuff on there. So now once I've got a kind of a pin cushion made, then I can start laying stuff on there because the pins will kind of tend to hold that in there. You can also kind of break things in half and then fold them across like that over the pins. Alright. So now the last thing that I've got here is called a feather stick. So this here is a bunch of shavings, and I've kind of created like an artificial match. So if I have a match, I have about that much heat in my fire tunnel. Now if I light this up, I can light this up with a match, but then instead of having this much heat, pretty soon I'll have this much heat. So it improves that part of my fire triangle. All right, the other cool thing about this is it's got a nice big lever on it, a nice big handle, so I can move this around pretty easily. So I'm going to use So this is kind of the fire. I was kind of lighting this off of the cattail. And this is where you've got the buffalo. You just want to get a fire going. And then I've got my lever, which makes it easy for me to put this underneath here. And then you can see kind of from there, you got a fire going. It's like that takes just like a little bit of preparation. And it did take me some time, but a lot of people will just be like, okay, let's throw some stuff on there and like do a little bit of stuff and then get the match, and then they spend a half an hour kind of fiddling with that. That's not the only way to start a fire, but that's a way that I like that I think works really well. So now, if you're a Stone Age person, kind of moving back to Stone Age fire, if you're a Stone Age person, you'd still have to at some point be able to get a fire going in the first place. Now, people believe, scientists believe that like probably the first people who used fire, it was one of two ways. They probably either someone like saw a forest fire and like saw the branch and grabbed the branch and realized that maybe because they had a handle they could kind of control it, right? So they grabbed the branch with some fire on it. They took a little bit of courage. They grabbed it and like, oh, and then maybe they kind of learned some things about what they can do with it aside from just being warm. The other way is like some of the places where people evolved, there was ongoing volcanic activity. So there's like, you know, in Hawaii a couple of years ago, they had all that big eruption. So you could go up to lava like that and then start things on fire. So using people that live near ongoing lava flows so they could have control of fire. But after a while, they learned how to actually make fire, not just control it. And it wasn't us that made it. So our species has been around for about 200,000 years, something like that. But we are not the species that invented fire. Fire's been around for about 1.5 million years, and we inherited that technology from another type of human. So it's kind of just an interesting thing. But we did improve on it. Once we learned how to do it, we did learn how to do more effective ways. One of the most primitive ways is 2 stones. It's called percussion fire. Flint and steel is kind of how we think about it today. Stone Age people didn't have steel, but they had iron ore. This is iron pyrite. It's also known as fool's gold. And it's got a little bit of iron in it, and if you smack this against a piece of flint, if it was pitch black out, you'd see tiny little sparks come off of it. To get a fire going with this is extremely hard. I've done it before and it took me like 2 hours. The sparks are like tiny and you have to have amazing material that just like wants to catch on fire really easily. So I'm not going to do that right now, but this is a really primitive Stone Age type of fire that people did use. I'm going to show you friction fire. So friction fire is when you use friction to create both a really good fuel and heat at the same time. So this is a bow drill. This is what Native Americans in this part of the world used in the Pacific Northwest because it's so wet here. This is the most kind of technologically advanced form of Stone Age fire. It's the most difficult to learn technically, but it works pretty well. So we'll see if we can get this to go. So what's going to happen is I'm going to create by rubbing these 2 sticks together, I'm going to create I'm going to grind the wood together and create like a really fine dust. And that dust is really good fuel because it's really mixed like a spray, just like I said before. And I'm also going to be creating heat at the same time. And hopefully I'll ignite it into an ember. Does anyone know what temperature wood ignites at? Anyone want to take a guess?
95.
Not 95.
Shoot.
100?
No, because sometimes it's just 100 degrees outside and wood doesn't catch on fire from that, right?
275.
A little higher.
220.
500?
Between 700 and 800. So I'll have to get this to that temperature to get it to ignite. Oh, not quite.
wait.
So now we'll have a pile of dust as like a coal. That won't catch on fire because it's just pure carbon, just like a barbecue. So what we do now is we have to have a nest, like a fibrous nest, that we can dump the coal into. And once I have it in here, so I have a fire triangle, fuel, oxygen, and heat. What can I do at this point to improve the triangle? Yeah, so I can add oxygen. I can't really do anything with the fuel. It's as good as it's going to get. The heat is in there already, so I can't really make it hotter. But I can add oxygen. So there's two ways I can do that. What's one way? Yeah, blowing on it. Anyone think of another way? Yeah, wind. So I can create artificial wind. I mean, I can just put it in the wind like this. There's a little bit of reaping now. Or you can see if I start kind of like mechanically kind of creating wind by moving, you'll see it start to smoke more. You guys see it smoking more? Yes? What's that? Yeah. Who wants to try and blow this into a flame? You're going to kind of blow like long, kind of whisper blow. Don't blow super hard. Blow hard. Alright, who else? Who else?
Should we get something really rocking?
Okay, one more person.
Drop. Where's Asa? I don't know. Just grab it and start stopping.